It's interesting. We've had what we did was with Wanemne, we teamed them up with a group of other professionals to train the members there. So they went through the regular process. So, if you have had to review all the stuff for the old stuff around Turner Valley, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like almost becoming Inspector Clouseau. You have to go and do all your investigating. And so it's a lot of reading and a lot of investigations. And then what we do is you go out and we're doing, we went out and did drilling on the locations to get an idea of what the extent of the contamination might be. And then we have a whole lab analysis that's undertaken to do that. What we would do is we would abandon the well. So we do downhole abandonment first, remove all the facility stuff that we could, and then we go back and do that drilling. So some of the sites there are going to be under remediation for years and years to come. Environmental oversight back as you remember, that's like it's if you think about it, it's a relatively new industry. Like it's 75 years old, and so it's evolved over a period of time. And what I was really proud of the work that we're able to do is that we worked with the community as well as other contractors to all about what the spirit and intent of Wanemne was, so that we could train others. But in terms of the process, it's just no different than it is. Like it was kind of cool being I was sitting on a well site that was drilled in 1957, and Aspenleaf acquired the assets from a company called NEP in 2018. We didn't benefit anything from the production on those wells that we're abandoning now, but it's part of the obligations that we took on as a company when we bought that company. So we take that very seriously, and I said demonstrated by the amount of money that we spent on reclamation since we've been since our birth, I guess, since 2014. So it's ongoing, but we did put a big dent in it. Now we have we completed phase 2s and phase 1s on all the well sites up there. So we actually have a really good handle on what our outstanding liability is. So I think we're far and away better positioned than most companies in the marketplace. We have a really clear understanding as to what the extent of the obligations are going forward. We had to do phase 2s on pretty much all our sites. It's just given the I have and this is a time for another presentation if you want, but I actually wrote a paper to the government of Alberta about what could happen in having an Indigenous-led company work on these sites. And we've done a whole analysis on who owned the wells and who benefit the most from the wells, and then also the age of the well. So like we're in good shape in that regard. So it was a fun project to do. It's not over yet. Well, I have a lot of scars from I've been doing this for a little while, and the whole piece around consultation or community relations or Indigenous engagement, if you want to call it that, it's evolved over a period of time. And I've had the privilege of working across Canada. I've had the ability to work on all sides of the table. I've worked for government, I've worked for communities, advising them on resource development. So my perspective is a little bit unique in that regard, I like to think. But to me, it's about collaboration, working together. We like as an industry, like a natural resource industry, like we have an impact. We have an important obligation to ensure that we look after the environment, and who better to do it with us as is with Indigenous communities. Like each one of the communities had some very different perspectives as to what their concerns were, but really the common thread through that is the land. And so I believe if we get that balance, go back to the three elements that are part of our governance structure, as you know, profit, people, and planet. If you get that balance correctly, you can actually engage in a way that is respectful, and you acknowledge that you're going to have that. It's important to have those partnerships. I view my development in communities as like I'm fortunate enough that after a while you get to know lots of people in the community, so it's kind of fun for me to go out into the communities. Not a lot of times it hasn't been fun, but the notion of being together as partners in development is really crucial. And I believe that I talked about Paul First Nation, so close to Edmonton, arguably be an urban reserve, but uh, you wouldn't know it by going out there. Like in terms of they should be one of the wealthiest nations with all that activity in that area. But you know, what I've learned about working in communities, there's a lot of difference in terms of this life, standard of living in communities where I work, whether it's running water to social problems to employment, et cetera. So it's really important for industry. And I believe, resource development industries are really on the cutting edge of all that stuff because that's most of the development takes place in close proximity to those communities. So I believe we have an obligation to partner together. I appreciate that because I do appreciate the work you're doing because I believe this conversation needs to happen. And one company I used to be the media spokesman, and I would take all the questions from the media, and it's really amazing some of the perceptions that people have that you really have to take that conversation, so I applaud the efforts of your organization, and I think and if you can do it in a respectful manner and in a way in which acknowledges the concerns that others, like through the consultation process, I can tell you that it can set in motion a very, very potentially adversarial relationship. And because I was in one community, they wouldn't even take one of my hats because they was an oil and gas company. But having that conversation and being willing to accept other perspectives is really important. I appreciate that question. I'll add, we are in the top quartile of, and amongst our peers of companies managing our greenhouse gas emissions. I don't have a slide. I built one for another discussion. I don't have one here, but that is important to us because when I go into communities from a consultation perspective, they're not just talking to me about the jobs or investing in their communities. They're talking about the land and the impact on the land. So I have to be, in my view, I think goes back to the three pillars of being all equal and having balance. Which I used to be the manager of corporate social responsibility for one of the companies I was at. And so it's ESG and all that stuff has evolved over time. But I think it's about the balance piece because communities will ask me about my performance on water use and my performance on the impact on the air because that impacts the land. So I think taking a balanced approach enables us to I want to make sure that I can leave my grandkids a good earth to live in. Like that's important to me. So I think if you have a single focus on just one component of your business, you're not going to be able to get that balance and make sure that you can execute. Because I believe that a company like Aspen Leaf is a great place to work. Like I said, I did a presentation for the executive. It was basically me interviewing them to see whether or not I want to work there. So if you can get the balance, environmental performance, social performance, and good governance is really a key piece. And I look at governance as the overall piece that holds all those ESG elements together. Well, how can I say this with all due respect to our industry? not all companies are the same. And so you have companies that run, I always make the analogy about, if you do just enough, not not exceeding the expectations of the regulations, you're right on the edge. And so you don't have any room for a problem. So, back in the day, I think that everybody, my father-in-law was in the, actually, he most probably was on some of the drilling rigs that drilled up in the Leduc, Devon, and some of the stories he would tell me. But really, it has evolved over time. But I think companies that operate on the edge, just near the edge of what's required from a regulatory perspective, are at risk. And if you fall off, you're going to have a problem. So it's building, and we've had problems. We had a spell this year. We had a pipeline break, and it's not all perfect, and you got to be able to respond to those issues. But and remember, it's people that are doing your work, and people are not machines. They do make mistakes, so you have to be able to account for that. But last 20 years, I think that I'm pleased to report that I work for a company right now, and all the companies I've worked for, there's a real big focus on safety and environmental performance. But it's all it's all about a learning process, and you can get to a point where sometimes people are slower learners than others. So it's a matter of being able to ensure that. I'd much rather be performing at a level in a company that allows me the flexibility that if in fact we do make a mistake, we can actually recover from it. I was able to. We had one of the largest spill in our company history. We had all the communities out right away. We talked about it right away with the regulator as soon as we found out about the spill. But it was a good exercise. I was mortified by it, but it was a good exercise in how we responded to it, and we were able to clean it up and stop it. So it's evolved over time, but it's like, to me, the whole part of our badge about excellence, it's a whole notion of continuous improvement and need to get better. And I think as an industry, we're doing the same thing. So like we just don't tell our story well enough to others, in my view. So like when I say we're performance from an emissions perspective, top quartile, like top 10% maybe in our peer group. We have a facility that operates with zero emissions, which is, we don't tell anybody about that because we're a privately held company. But anyhow, hopefully that answered your question. And I think it's really important that like I said at the outset, every human activity has an impact. It's just a matter of determining how much, what's acceptable, if you want to call it that, how you manage it, and how you mitigate the impact, or what the effects of that. So the industry's evolved. Like we're continually looking for new technology to manage the impact we have on the environment. And is it all good? No. Can we be better? Absolutely. But it's all part of that continuous improvement and being willing to accept the challenge to try and strive for excellence. Taking the hard conversations is like, my view is that you can ignore stuff, but it can become bigger problems if you let it go. And to me, about respect and recognition of the respective rights that communities have, and they're true nations in and of themselves. And I sort of use the word community interchangeably and nation, but I should be clear on that. But it's recognizing that the importance of that relationship with the nations, and to be able to say we can walk this together, as opposed to me just sort of doing my own thing, because you can't do that. Okay, this is a trick question here. I think that I go back to the three pillars that we have as a company: profit, people, and planet. Um, all reports that I see tell me that the oil and gas industry or fossil fuels are going to be part of that our energy consumption equation for some time to come. It's about striking that balance, as over time. Like, I look at, I have grandkids. I got 5 grandkids. I have four grandsons and a granddaughter. And I wonder what the world's going to look like for them for jobs in the future. But it's changed, and so it's that collaboration and recognition that people are approaching from a different perspective. So transition, a just transition. I always find the government kind of statements to be kind of intriguing. As I have worked for government, it's all that government talk at times. And I don't want to get myself in trouble here, but I do think the working together is going to be a key component. Acknowledging the fact that we do have that impact, but also acknowledging the fact that the industry is doing some exceptionally good work in terms of mitigating the impact of greenhouse gases on our environment. But the reality is that we can't find crews to go to work for us. We can't find, there's the enrollment rates in engineering. One of my nephew went into civil engineering as opposed to chemical or the other kind of engineering, mechanical engineering, because that's where he thought there was a job. But I think collaboration together is really important. It can't be done in Ottawa exclusively, and it needs to be done together. And it's really, in my view, groups like yours that are really going to have you're the young folks are going to be taking on those jobs of the future, not me. I'm going to be retired. So I'm done. I'm at the end of my career. So it's really important for you guys to have a voice there, as opposed to having somebody outside of your world, because it's crucial that you're at the table as part of that discussion. Question, and thank you. I believe that you can actually, it's an opportunity. There's an opportunity to actually affect some change. It's not like it's. I'm fortunate. I work for a team of executives that actually get it, and they actually get what I'm talking about. A lot of companies, some of them, it was all about an education process. So that was sort of, I had to manage stakeholders within the company and outside of that. But I honestly believe that you can actually have that impact from working within, and you can actually affect good change. And so I remember one company I was working for, and I said to them when I first arrived, you better get a strategy together to offer up some level of equity participation for the Indigenous communities and where you work. And the response I got around that table was, not in a million years were they ever going to contemplate that. This was 20 some odd years ago, when I had that discussion at that company. I was a lot younger back then. And so I was able to affect that change. And so we actually were able to put together a deal that actually afforded those communities an opportunity to participate in an equity basis in the development of our project, which was over a $250 million project. We were well ahead of our time, but that was something. So I think the opportunity is there. Young people, I would love to have, we're a small company. I don't have a team. I am the team. And that's really where I prided myself in providing people with opportunities to grow their careers. So I think it's a great business to be in. It's a heck of a lot. I've gone all over Canada. I've traveled around the world in this role. So if you like to travel, it's a decent opportunity. They pay you well, and you can actually have an impact. You have an impact on like when I come up to people, when I run into people in my work. I ran into a young lady. And I'll give this as a last comment because I know time is short. I did a project where I set up a deal for her mom, and this was not. I wasn't working in the resource sector at the time, but it was in response to a lot of work around the resource sector. I put together a training program for single moms. I worked for the welfare department, believe it or not, here in Alberta. I was the employment counselor. And what happened was that woman got a job, got training, got a job, and went on. And I was at a wedding later on, many years later, and I bumped into her daughter, and her daughter comes up to me, gave me a big hug, and she said, "I can't thank you enough. The impact you had on my life." I said, "You were little when I saw it, when I met you." And she said, "No, no, no. What you did for my mom enabled me to have a good role model to move forward and get myself in." She's an executive with one of the largest banks here in Canada. So you can have impact, whether it's working as a stakeholder relations person or an employment counselor at some government office. But it's a gratifying place to be. Got to do a lot of things that nobody else got to do. Sorry, Hannah, I got to do a whole ton of things that a lot of people in their careers never get to do. So got paid to do it too.
It's pretty wonderful, kind of the places you go, the people you meet. Like what a unique journey, and it sounds like it's been really rewarding. So we appreciate that you've brought that here and shared all of that with us today.
It's been my privilege. Thank you for taking the time. I hope everybody's found it worthwhile. And anytime, got lots of stories.
I know we're going to wrap up here soon, but thank you so much, Andrew, for all your answers. You really give a lot of good insight into how exactly things have changed and how industry is headed in the right direction, but at the same time, still has a long way to go. So I appreciate you stopping in for sure.
No problem. It's the pursuit of excellence is what you have to look for.
Perfect. Love to hear it. Thank you very much for coming in today.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks, Hannah.
Take care.